Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our live coverage of Starlink 8-5 mission from Cape Canaveral Space Force Station, Space Launch Complex 40 from Space Coast. We hope you all are doing fine. Now we are awaiting for a Falcon 9 liftoff at 10:16 p.m. Eastern Time from Slick 40, Eastern Florida, for a southeasterly launch for SpaceX Starlink mission. The Starlink mission 8-5 will launch 20 Starlink satellites, including 13 with direct-to-cell capabilities satellites to low Earth orbit. This launch marks SpaceX's amazing 353rd overall launch. Hello, my name is Dipta Maitra, performing the commentary for today's mission launch. We are super excited bringing you the coverage of SpaceX 59th overall launch and the 58th launch of the Falcon 9 of this year. This will be the 41st dedicated Starlink mission of the year for SpaceX. Prior to today's launch, SpaceX has launched 903 Starlink satellites so far, over 40 flights this year, and overall 6,551 Starlink satellites to date. Now, before getting into the mission details, just a reminder, the Boeing Starliner crew flight test is aiming for June 5th at 10:52 a.m. Eastern Time, which will be 14:52 hours UTC, with backup dates on 6th. For now, the weather is expected to be 90% favorable, with the cumulus cloud rule being the primary concern only. June 1st launch attempt was scrubbed due to an observation of a ground launch sequencer. The system was unsuccessful in verifying the sequencer's necessary redundancy. Another update we have: upcoming 4th integrated flight test of Starship is now targeting on June 6th, previously scheduled for June 5th. Also, Elon Musk confirmed Starship is ready to fly. Just a heads up, it's me running the show for our launches, so if we hit any technical issues, hang tight. But nothing to worry, I will do my best to walk you through the Falcon 9 launch happening in nearly 48 minutes and counting. Now let's get back to today's mission. So far, SpaceX reports that the weather is looking good for today's Falcon 9 launch opportunity and the range is ready to support, having only 10% of violation and 90% favorable outlook, with small primary concern being the cumulus cloud rule. We hope that they are able to launch on time and not have to push too far. But if for some reason we don't launch today, we do have a backup opportunity tomorrow, that is Wednesday, June 5th, with launch window opening at 7:50 p.m. Eastern Time. Firstly, we would like to thank all of you joining us for today's launch and would request that if you haven't already, please subscribe this video and please like this video to help YouTube's algorithm bring in more space fans and rocket enthusiasts. Also, it will be kind of you subscribing to our channel. Now let's talk about today's payload details for Starlink Group 8-5 mission. With this mission marks the 41st dedicated Starlink launch of this year. Now, a quick fun fact and answer to the question asked in the poll. At the very inception, the two identical Starlink satellites called Microsat 2A and Microsat 2B were launched on 22nd February back in 2018. Upon orbital deployment, they were renamed to Tintin A and Tintin B. So, Tintin A and Tintin B are the first Starlink satellites to be launched. Now, the Starlink satellites are built at SpaceX Satellite Development Facility in Redmond, Washington. Today's launch consists of 20 version 2 mini satellites, including 13 satellites with direct-to-cell capabilities. The version 2 variant of Starlink is too large to fit inside a Falcon 9 fairing and is meant to be launched by Starship. So for that, SpaceX modified the original version 2 blueprint into a smaller but more compact one named version 2 mini. SpaceX indicated they would build satellites of the second generation constellation in two different but technically identical form factors, one with the physical structures tailored to the launch on Falcon 9, that is version 2 mini, and another tailored for the launch on Starship, that is version 2. Each Starlink satellite is equipped with powerful 5 advanced Ku band phased array antennas and 3 dual band parabolic antennas which utilizes Ka and E band to provide increased capacity. These antennas utilizes Ku, Ka and E band frequencies, allowing Starlink to provide high bandwidth connectivity, that is 4 times more capacity per satellite than the earlier versions. Each satellite features a dual solar array with a size of 52.5 square meters, which unfurls to a wingspan of 100 feet. Also, it has a high capacity battery to provide power to the payloads. The two solar arrays are also aero neutral, which enable faster on-orbit maneuvers. Before moving on, we would like to welcome Pop Tripika. Thanks for joining us. Yes, we are also looking forward for more direct to cell capabilities satellite launch, so that this technology and what they claim about this technology to have no dead zones, it will be getting possible sooner. But for now, thanks for joining us. Actually, we would like to, in the next stream possible, if you can, we will let you to see the regular sized version 2 satellite. For this, now we are having only version 2 mini satellites to be shown on the picture which you are seeing, but in the next stream, if possible, we will like to show you the real sized version 2. So now coming back to the payload details which we were talking about. Each Starlink satellite contains 3 space laser transponders, that is optical intersatellite links or ISLs for intercommunications, operating at up to 200 gigabytes per second, which together across the constellation form a global internet mesh that can connect customers anywhere in the world. also enabling the spacecraft to transmit data without local ground station, providing truly global coverage. Each Starlink version 2 mini satellites weighs nearly 800 kilograms, that is 1763 pounds. Starlink satellites are equipped with efficient ion Hall effect thrusters powered by argon, which enable Starlink satellites to orbit raise, maneuver in space, and deorbit at the end of their useful life. Starlink is the first Krypton-propelled spacecraft ever flown. Later switched to argon Hall effect thrusters for cost effectiveness. Also, upon switching to argon, Starlink is the first argon-propelled spacecraft ever flown in space. Now, relative to Krypton, the argon required to fuel Starlink version 2 satellites will be practically free. To put it into perspective, fueling its next constellation of almost 30,000 version 2 satellites could cost SpaceX less than fueling 4,000 version 1 satellites, which were based on Krypton. Also, SpaceX claims that its second generation thrusters using argon has 2.4 times the thrust and 1.5 times the specific impulse of the previously Krypton fuel thrusters. Today's payload will be placed in an orbit with an altitude of 535 kilometers and an inclination of 53 degrees. As this launch belongs to group 8, so these are its configurations for placing on orbit. But this configuration does not apply to every Starlink satellite. Starlink satellites are placed in different configurations based on their group. We will dive into the details more thoroughly in a while. Starlink uses custom-built navigation sensors named Star Tracker that survey the stars to determine each satellite's location, altitude, and orientation for best possible broadband throughput. Each Starlink satellite contains 4 reaction wheels, providing agile altitude control for the vehicle. The hot spare configuration ensures high reliability operation, and its aluminum flywheel is fully demisable at the end of life. Also worth mentioning, the Starlink satellites are equipped with an autonomous collision avoidance system for avoiding collisions with other spacecraft and space junks autonomously, which utilizes the US Department of Defense debris tracking database. Now, as today's Starlink launch includes direct-to-cell capabilities satellites, so let's talk about a little of this technology. Well, speaking of SpaceX direct-to-cell Starlink satellites, direct-to-cell is a technology developed by Starlink team. In easy words, it's like having a cell phone tower in space. This technology allows your cell phone to connect directly to satellites. Now imagine you are in a remote area where there is no cell tower nearby. Normally you won't get any signal on your phone, right? But with direct to cell, your phone can get a signal directly from a Starlink satellite overhead. You don't need to make any changes to your existing LTE phone or download any special applications. It is designed to work with common LTE standards only. Whether you are on land, lakes, or coastal waters, as long as you can see the sky, you can get a signal. It provides connectivity in remote regions, giving you peace of mind when you need it the most. Now, Starlink recently achieved its first video call on X. You can see on your screen how it went through. These calls were made from unmodified mobile phones. Previously, we saw textual communications using Starlink's direct to cell capabilities. Starlink is expecting to go live with T-Mobile later this year. Now let's go through a quick comparison of latency between Starlink and geostationary satellites. Earlier we had an update that Starlink achieved a new internal median latency record of 28 milliseconds. Also now they have goal of median latency for Starlink internet in the US to get below 20 milliseconds. The internet that comes from satellite, most of the time it's from a single satellite that's orbiting about 35,786 kilometers from Earth. Because it is so far, the time it takes for the data to go back and forth, what we call latency, is pretty high. This makes it tough to do things like streaming movies, playing online games, and making video calls. Now let's talk about Starlink. It's like a big team of thousands of satellites that are much closer to us, just about 550 kilometers from Earth. They are they are all over the place, covering the whole globe, and because they are closer, the latency is way lower. To put it into perspective, think of 25 milliseconds of latency compared to 600 and plus milliseconds of latency. You can see on your screen what is the number of round trips in each case of Starlink compared to a geostationary satellite. That's a huge difference. So in a nutshell, Starlink's lower orbit makes it a game changer for satellite internet. This could mean smoother video calls, lag-free online gaming, and other high-rate data activities. Now moving on, let's learn a little bit about Starlink's collision avoidance system. It's quite fascinating to know how, despite having so many satellites around the Earth, they manage to stay safe and avoid collisions. So let's learn about in a rough way, not to getting too deep. So SpaceX designs the Starlink satellites orbit raising and orbit lowering reference trajectories with a time optimal path planning algorithm. The algorithm includes additional constraints to ensure that the Starlink satellites always remain at a large and safe distance from space stations, other spacecraft, and from other Starlink satellites as well. As an additional safety measure, Starlink's screening system constantly monitors the satellite's planned reference trajectories against the space stations. The system alerts the Starlink operator immediately when a potential conjunction is detected and reference trajectories are replanned to change the geometry of the encounter and avoid the conjunction whenever possible. Each Starlink launch typically includes enough satellites to fill several orbital planes. For this reason, a train of satellites is usually divided into smaller trains that depart from parking orbit on different dates to target specific orbital planes, which is also a part of pre-planned conjunction avoidance. But with this pre-planned conjunction avoidance, there comes a drawback about that I will be talking now. The techniques for avoiding conjunction at the planning stages are an additional precaution in addition to Starlink's collision avoidance system. And this collision avoidance system which I am mentioning, it is on board the Starlink satellites. In this context, conjunction avoidance during planning refers to designing trajectories that maintain satellites far from the space station or other spacecraft or space junks under nominal circumstances. Deconflicting trajectories at the planning stage requires predicting potential conjunctions several weeks into the future. And here comes the catch that which naturally limits the accuracy of the results. As a part of SpaceX multi-tiered approach to space safety, Starlink's automatic collision avoidance system allows satellites to plan maneuvers to minimize the collision probability during close approaches that could not be avoided when planning. Would like to welcome Fairmaid. Good morning and thanks for joining us. Even we are glad that you could make up to here and we could be together seeing this stream. Also, we have today two more upcoming streams. Hope you can have time and to watch them. For now, just enjoy the stream and bear my ugly voice. So now let's look into this table as we have here for the orbital status of second generation Starlink satellites prior to today's launch. As mentioned before, you will notice the differences in orbital placement parameters for each group of Starlink satellites. In this case, we have details for group 5, 6, 7 and 8. So first we are getting nominal altitude here, which is the average altitude at which the satellites in a particular group are intended to orbit the Earth. For instance, group 5 and 6 are planned to orbit at an altitude of 530 kilometers, while for group 7 it is 525 kilometers and for group 8 it is 535 kilometers. Also, a point to be noted is that the satellite can be deployed between a range of minus 50 kilometers to plus 70 kilometers related to the nominal altitude, but not exceeding the maximum of 580 kilometers. Next, we are having inclination. This is the angle between the orbital plane of the satellites and the equatorial plane of the Earth. Different inclinations allows the satellites to cover different areas of the Earth. Now for the satellites in groups 5 and 6, they have an inclination of 43 degrees, whereas group 7 and 8, they have an inclination of 53 degrees. Each group has a plan to launch nearly 2,500 satellites for different orbital completions. Moving on, next we got the total satellite launched for each group. Prior to today's launch, the status is for group 5, 699 satellites have been launched, whereas for group 6, 1,387 satellites have been launched. For group 7, 389 satellites have been launched, and for group 8, 61 satellites have been launched so far. Now today for group 8, more 20 satellites will be launching. Next we have the active satellites, that is the number of launch satellites that are currently active, excluding decaying, deorbited and failed ones. For group 5, 688 out of 699 launch satellites are active. For group 6, 1352 out of 1387 launch satellites are active. For group 7, 386 out of 389 launch satellites are active, and for group 8, all the launch satellites are active so far, that is 61 out of 61. Next we are having the number of satellites required to be launched to complete the orbital or suborbital cells for each group. For group 5 and group 6, an additional 414 satellites are required. For group 7, 2111 satellites are required, and for group 8, more 2439 satellites are required. The committed date for half of the completion target is December 2028, and for the absolute completion is December 2031. Now we have a request again for you folks. If you haven't already, consider giving this video a like. It really helps YouTube's algorithm to bring in more space fans and rocket enthusiasts. And if you are feeling we are adding value to your viewing experience, consider subscribing. We would be super grateful to for your support. Now let's Take a look at the flight record for the booster supporting today's Starlink mission. The booster with tail number 1067 that's supporting today's mission is quite a mature booster with 19 previous flights in its record, including missions like Commercial Resupply 22, SpaceX Crew 3, Turksat 5B, then again SpaceX Crew 4. Next we have again the commercial resupply mission to ISS, that is CRS 25, Eutelsat Hotbird 13G, Empower A, PSN Satria, Telkomsat Miraputi 2, and 10 Starlink missions. Now this booster is awaiting its 20th flight, just 19 minutes away. Previously, Starlink Group 6-59 launch on May 17 from here at Cape Canaveral only. SpaceX achieved a record. For the first time, a Falcon 9 booster with tail number 1062 launched for record-breaking 21st time. Currently, other boosters with tail number 1060 and 1061 have 20 launches so far as their milestones. And today's supporting booster with tail number 1067 is also joining its two other siblings, each with 20 flights in its record. Hope they will reach their next record-breaking milestone soon. Now let's have a look at the bar graphs. Before today's launch, SpaceX completed 57 launches of the Falcon 9 so far this year as part of its milestone, with recent Starlink Group 6-64 mission launch from here at Space Launch Complex 40, Cape Canaveral, back on May 31st. SpaceX hit a big milestone this year's 50th launch with the previous Starlink 8-7 mission that was also comprising of direct-to-cell capability satellites to be launched. Now that's just two more than half of last year's Falcon 9 launches, which totaled 48. Now with the latest Starlink mission launch, they have 9 more launches than half of the total launches made last year. This year's count already surpasses the total number of Falcon 9 launches from all the years leading up to 2021, and they are now getting close to the launches made in 2022, with only 3 launches to go. Now with today's launch of Starlink Group 8-5 mission, the bar graph depicts 58 Falcon 9 launches so far this year. They have already done more than half, as being 5 months and 4 days. If they keep up with this pace, they are on their mighty way to hit 140 to 148 launches by the end of this year. SpaceX is really pushing hard to achieve their big goals. Also, we have an upcoming 4th integrated flight test of Starship, tentatively on June 6th, which was previously scheduled for June 5th. Now please allow us a couple of seconds to check whether the launch is on time or not and to stay updated, but be tuned in here only. We will be right back in just few seconds. So far it looks like it's on time. SpaceX is targeting for 10:16 p.m. Eastern Time, which will be 7:16 p.m. Pacific Time, both on Tuesday, and which will be 2:16 a.m. Wednesday UTC. Now we are currently at T minus 15 minutes into the countdown as SpaceX fuels the Falcon 9 rocket. As we move through the countdown, we just want to say thanks to everyone joining us live. We are really appreciate you being here. Big thanks to our amazing YouTube community for being here today. If you haven't already, please like this video to help YouTube's algorithm bring more space fans and to discover this stream and to join us. And if you consider subscribing to us, we would be super grateful for your support. We are truly thankful for every one of you on this live stream. Now let's go ahead as we progress through the countdown and review the milestones that lie ahead of us for this Cape Canaveral flight. At T minus 38 minutes, countdown begins at this point when SpaceX launch director gives the go for the start of propellant load. If everything looks fine, prop load begins at T minus 30 minutes mark with the loading of rocket grade kerosene or RP1 on board the first stage and the second stages of the Falcon 9 rocket. At the same time, LOX load, that is super chilled liquid oxygen, is loaded on board the first stage. And then at T minus 16 minutes, which will be the next event that we are looking for here, that's when the second stage liquid oxygen load begins. At T minus 7 minutes, that's when the chill down of 9 Merlin engines gets underway, which involves flowing a small amount of liquid oxygen through the plumbing and turbopumps, which helps protect the engine from the risk of thermal shocks and damages during the startup sequence. At about 6 minutes before liftoff, the first stage kerosene tank should be full. In a T minus 4.5 minutes, the strong back retract sequence begins. The process begins with the clamp arms underneath the payload, fairing opening up, followed by the transport ejector or the strong back reclining about 1.5 degrees from the Falcon 9. It remains in that position until liftoff. It's when it rapidly pulls back to clear the way for Falcon 9's vertical ascent. At T minus 3 minute mark, the first stage liquid oxygen loading should be complete, followed by the second stage liquid oxygen loading wrapping up at T minus 2 minute mark. At that point, the Falcon 9 rocket is fully fueled with 1 million pounds of propellant. At T minus 1 minute mark, the propellant tanks are brought up to flight pressure. In the final 60 seconds countdown, the control of the flight system, that is the launch sequence, is handed over from the ground sequencer to Falcon 9's onboard flight computers. If everything looks good, at T minus 45 seconds mark, the launch director gives the final go for Falcon 9 liftoff. Now at T minus 3 seconds, the engine ignition sequence start command being issued by onboard engine controller. Finally at T0, we have liftoff. If all 9 Merlin 1D engines ignite and are healthy, flight computer will give the command for the hold down clamps to release the Falcon 9. Currently targeting 10:16 p.m. Eastern Time, which will be 7:16 p.m. Pacific Time, both on Tuesday, and 2:16 a.m. UTC on Wednesday, that is June 5th. Let's go ahead and briefly step through the trajectory for today's mission. Falcon 9 will lift off from Space Launch Complex 40 from Cape Canaveral with spacecraft on board. That is the batch of 20 Starlink satellites for a southeast trajectory heading into low Earth orbit, indicated by that green line on your screen. The red line indicates where the Falcon 9 first stage will land after stage separation just a little later, leaving Florida Space Coast. This is going to be a drone ship landing using autonomous spaceport drone ship. For today, it's just read the instruction drone ship, one of the two here on the east coast, which means that the first stage booster with tail number 1067 flying for its 20th time will be returning heading out to drone ship for its landing. Now coming to some stats related to today's mission launch. The launch marks 353rd SpaceX overall launch and the 41st dedicated launch of Starlink satellites for this year. This is the 342nd Falcon 9 launch to date. This booster will be the 20th flight of this particular Falcon 9 booster supporting today's mission with tail number 1067. It's the 58th Falcon 9 launch of 2024 so far and is SpaceX 59th overall launch of this year, including the third integrated flight test of Starship. This is SpaceX 287th Falcon 9 booster reflight to date, that is the launch of a booster that has flown at least once before. 190th orbital launch for SpaceX, launching from Slick 40. This is the 245th overall orbital launch from this pad, that is Space Launch Complex 40. And with this mission success, SpaceX will have a remarkable 6,571 Starlink satellites launched to date. Now moving on to some reusability statistics. This launch marks 273rd Falcon 9 booster reflight to date. This is the 83rd landing on Just Read the Instructions drone ship. This will be the 20th landing of the first stage booster with tail number 1067. And with this mission's first stage landing, which paves the way to 247th overall drone ship landing, marking 299th Falcon 9 landing to date and 316th SpaceX overall landing to date. Now, meanwhile, the stream starts. Just let me tell you some stats, more stats about today's mission. The SpaceX launches this year, including today's mission. So, SpaceX has a total of 59 launches, and out of those, 17 were non-Starlink missions. Recent non-Starlink mission we witnessed was European Space Agency's EarthCare mission. SpaceX reused boosters for 56 times in those launches, showing their commitment to sustainability and reusability. Now, if we look into the geographical distribution, we get they have 40 launches from East Coast with 12 from Launch Complex 39A, that is Kennedy Space Center, and 28 from Space Launch Complex 40, including today's one. On the West Coast, we have 18 launches. And there was one launch from Gulf Coast at Starbase. And as for landings, they have nailed it 57 times. Most of them were
Strong
on
back
droneship.
retract has started.
Well, we got the call out for the strong back retract has been started. The process is now underway, and you can see the clamp arms around the stage 2 are now coming to open. You are seeing the clamp arms opening up here underneath the payload fairing, the transport ejector reclining a degree and a half from the vehicle, and now less than 4 minutes away from liftoff. Coming up on T-minus 3 minutes, everything continues to be go. We are currently chilling in the Merlin engines back from T-minus 7 minutes when we open up pre-valves, which allows the propellant down to the engines to get them prepared for the ignition just before T0. You can see the strong back is now retracting away. It is a slow process. We do this slowly because you might be able to see we still have the lines that are carrying liquid oxygen to the second stage, as well as the electrical signals and the air conditioning up there in the payload fairing. We need to make sure that all of this easily stretch out and all mechanism works fine, so that we can recline strong back's position without tugging on any of these
Stage 1
lines.
LOX load is complete.
Right on time, we got the call out for the liquid oxygen loading of the first stage is complete. We are now awaiting for second stage that will finish up at just inside T-minus 2 minute mark. Now currently we are inside 2.5 minutes. The range continues to be green, and the weather, of course, as you can see there, has cooperated. Again, if for some reason we do not launch today, we do have a backup opportunity tomorrow, that is on Tuesday, May 28, with launch window opening at 7:30 a.m.
Stage 2
Eastern
LOX
time.
load is complete.
And we got the call out for the second stage LOX load being complete. All propellants are now on board the Falcon 9 with 1 million pounds of propellant. We are now beginning to vent down the pressure that was in the tubing on the strong back.
Ground gas closeout has started.
That's why you can see those clouds coming out. We also got the call out for the ground gas closeout. That's where we bleed the pressure off that cold gas when it reacts with the moist humid air, which gives you that nice white cloud, an indicator of launch coming up. Next event, T minus 1 minute, we should hear the call out that Falcon 9
Falcon 9 is in startup.
flight computers are in startup and controlling the rocket for the remainder of the countdown. And we got the call out for the
Launch
same.
director, go for launch.
SpaceX launch director giving go for the launch. We are coming up on T minus 30 seconds. All system continues to remain go for the launch of Falcon 9 and Starlink.
T minus 30 seconds. T minus 15 seconds. T minus 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Ignition and liftoff. Go Falcon, go Starlink.
And we have liftoff. Falcon 9 has cleared the tower and is on its way to low Earth orbit, deploying the Starlink satellites.
Stage 1 chamber pressure is nominal.
T plus 24 seconds into the flight, we got call out for stage 1 engine chamber pressure being nominal. Falcon 9 on its way with 20 Starlink satellites into low Earth orbit. So far everything looks fine.
Power and telemetry nominal.
We got good callouts. Power, telemetry and propulsion is nominal. We are into the throttle bucket. We are throttling down the 9 Merlin engine as we prepare for the period of maximum dynamic stress coming up. And we did got a call out for the vehicle being supersonic. We have exceeded Mach 1 on the Falcon 9.
Pressure.
Max Q call out. We are through the period of maximum stress on the vehicle. We have throttled the Merlin engines back up to full power. Next, we are expecting a call out for MVAC engine chill.
MVAC chill.
Right now, we have started to chill down the MVAC engine on the second stage prior to its ignition just after stage separation coming up. 3 events in rapid succession. The shutdown of main engine on the first stage, that is main engine cutoff, MECO, followed by stage separation and ignition of second stage MVAC engine, that is SES-1, that will boost the payload into low Earth orbit. Let's hear the call out.
Nominal trajectory.
We got good call outs for the vehicle being in nominal trajectory.
MECO.
Stage separation confirmed.
MVAC ignition.
So we got the call outs for all these rapid successions events that we were expecting. MECO, then we got the call out for the stage separation and MVAC ignition. Now the stage nitrogen thrusters is now beginning to reorient the first stage, and the flight computers has commanded the 4 hypersonic titanium
confirmed.
grid fins to slowly begin deploying. Now that the stage separation is successful, we got call out that the fairing has successfully separated. You are looking right now a view of the first stage continuing under the guidance of the grid fins and the gravity as it descends back to Earth. It will continue to rise towards the apogee before descending back towards the landing on the drone ship. Just read the instructions stationed in the Atlantic Ocean. Second stage, meanwhile, in the middle of its 6-minute burn, is on its way into the parking orbit. So far, the launch has been great. The first stage has done its job and is on its way back. The second stage is running at full power and we are getting good views from the second stage. Now we are getting ready for the first stage to return to the drone ship landing site. During this part of the flight, stage 1 completely relies on the grid fins for steering as it returns to Earth. These grid fins orient the Falcon 9 during re-entry and guide the rocket during its descent. Right now, we are viewing the second stage, but occasionally on your left side of your screen, you will see nitrogen gas bursts from the first stage for altitude control. These are basically used to position the vehicle as it heads back towards the drone ship. Next, we are expecting a call out for stage 1 entry burn to start up. According to the flight profile that was provided by SpaceX, the stage 1 entry burn startup should start at 6 minute T plus 6 minute and 10 seconds, and stage 1 entry burn will be turned off, or you can say shut down, at T plus 6 minute and 36 seconds. So let's hear the call outs.
Stage 1 entry burn startup. Stage 1 FTS is saved.
And there is a confirmation. We have just lit 3 of the Merlin 1D engines on the first stage. You can see now we are rapidly slowing down the vehicle as it enters the Earth's atmosphere, and this burn should last just around 26 seconds.
Entry burn shutdown.
And there we go. There is the confirmation of the shutdown of entry burn on the first stage.
Nominal trajectory.
The Falcon 9 first stage is equipped with 4 landing legs, and those are made out of carbon fiber with an aluminium honeycomb. We did got callouts for stage 1 FTS being saved. Now we should be expecting a call out for stage 1 being transonic. Meanwhile, would like to say hello to Simon. Hope you are doing well.
Transonic.
And thanks for joining us. Now getting back to the mission, stage 1 being transonic, we got the call out. Now we are traveling slower than the speed of sound as it heads towards landing. Speaking of landing, we are just about 60 seconds away from that. Next, we will be expecting
Stage 1 landing burn.
and we
Stage
did
2
got
is in terminal guidance.
here we go. Great shot of that landing bird with that center E9 engine now lit. We are slowing down the vehicle very rapidly. Should be seeing those landing legs deploy any seconds now.
Stage 1 landing leg deploy. Stage 2 FTS is saved.
Callouts for stage 2
Stage 1
FTS
landing
being
confirmed.
saved. And there we have it. We have successfully made the 316th landing of an orbital class rocket. Coming up next, we will have the second stage engine cutoff, that is SECO 1, and we did got that call out. And following that event, we will enter into 34 minutes of coast phase as the vehicle ascends to its
Nominal
target
orbit insertion.
orbit. And these were the callouts we were waiting for. Second stage engine cutoff, that is SECO 1, as well as the confirmation of a nominal good orbit. Today's landing marks 316th overall landing of an orbital class rocket. And with that, we will wrap up our coverage for now. Up next, in just couple of minutes, we will be streaming the Rocket Lab's pre-fire and ICE mission. Be sure to check out that, and also be sure to check out the social media for confirmation of Starlink deployment. We want to thank all of you joining us with today's launch, and we hope you all enjoy the week ahead. Hope you enjoyed the stream. Once again, thanks for joining us, showing your such patience, love, and understanding, staying till the end. We are glad to have you all here with us. This is AstroYonder Live, and me Dipta signing off for now, and we will see you next time.